talk about the 49ers with Matt Barrows, the beat reporter for the Sacramento Bee. You can check everything out on sacbee.com or the Sacramento Bee. He's got a very, very interesting column that he wrote today about Jim Harbaugh going to Michigan. Matt, Happy New Year. Always good to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Grant. How are you doing?
Doing good. I've gotten a lot of good feedback. I know you have, too, on the story you wrote about Jim Harbaugh, pretty much putting it into a little satire of a vehicle going to Michigan. You've worked with him. He's going back to his alma mater. Is the essence of your story kind of like be careful what you wish for, or just to prepare people for what they're getting?
It's more the latter. I mean, this is a very unusual guy, and he's different than any other coach I've covered, and anyone who's covered him in the past has said the same thing. So, and I'm not saying it's bad. In fact, you know, I think if you polled all the beat writers, the guys that were with him every day of the week throughout the past 4 years, I think you'd find that at the end of the day, they all liked him. You know, there were times where he could be very frustrating, but he was always interesting. And, you know, one of the best things about Jim Harbaugh covering him is that he didn't play favorites. There was no national guy that he would go to with big stories. He treated everyone evenly. If he offended you or didn't answer your question to your liking one day, he would do the same thing to the next guy the next day. So he was very even-handed in that regard, and that to me is the best. You know, the best part of covering somebody. You don't want an unfair advantage for one of your competitors, and Jim Harbaugh, if anything, was fair.
I guess the next question, and it's probably the most important for 49er fans, how much will they miss Jim Harbaugh as being their coach in terms of wins and losses?
We're going to find that out pretty fast, I think. Yeah, I will say that this team could be actually a better team in 2015 than it was in 2014, and that's because I just can't see them being as injured and without star players like Alden Smith for long periods of time. So, you know, sometimes you see that. You see a Bill Walsh leaving and a George Seifert coming in, and the team doing a little bit better. Jimmy Johnson stepping out, Barry Switzer stepping in and winning a Super Bowl. There can be sort of an echo effect, if you will, when a very good coach leaves, and that certainly could happen here. You know, that's the process they're in now. They began their coaching search in earnest today, the same day that Jim Harbaugh accepted the job or went in front of the media for the first time in Ann Arbor. So that's probably going to take a week. Maybe you know, this time next week we'll be learning the identity of the 49ers' new head coach. But one thing's for sure, he's going to come in and find a pretty veteran roster and a pretty loaded roster, certainly better than any of the other teams that are looking for a head coach right now.
Matt Barrows of the Sacramento Bee joining us right here on the Grant Napear Show. How much confidence do you think the players on offense have in Colin Kaepernick right now?
I think that's, you know, somewhere in the middle. I really thought that Kaepernick's last game was one of his best. It wasn't prolific in yardage, but you know, that's what you want to see. The throw to Anquan Bolden on that 76-yard touchdown was exactly, I think, what the 49ers want out of Colin Kaepernick. And that's a guy that's going to elude the pass rush, and instead of running for 5 yards or 6 yards out of bounds, keeping his eyes up and finding that open receiver downfield. That's something that defenses all season long were betting that Colin Kaepernick couldn't do, and most of the time they were right on that play. And then, you know, maybe the last couple of games, Kaepernick started to operate like the quarterback that the 49ers wanted, and so, you know, I think that there's optimism about him. I think he's got all of the attributes that you want in an elite quarterback. He's certainly not elite now, but you know, he works hard. He's smart. He's got all the physical traits. He's tough. Sacked 52 times this season and didn't miss a snap. That's the most sacks that any one quarterback took this year. So you put all those things together. If he has a dedicated off season, if they bring in the right offensive coach, and that's a big question mark with this coaching staff. I really think that there's an optimism about him moving forward.
Matt, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when you look at the 49ers offensive line, you would always hear, arguably best line in football, one of the best lines in football. What happened to that line this year, and do you think that's an area that they have to really fix moving into the offseason?
I don't, and a lot of people disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But I really think that they've got a lot of talent on that line, and they've got a lot of guys just sort of waiting in the wings as well. I mean, they seem to use a third-round pick on an offensive lineman every year, and as a result, you've got several guys who are just kind of sitting back there fallow, not being used at all right now. I don't know what exactly happened. They let up a lot of sacks, and that's due largely to bad play by the offensive line. I will point out that the line was a lot better, especially in the running game when Anthony Davis was back at his right tackle position versus Jonathan Martin in there. They had some injuries at center as well, and that's always a big position as far as the continuity and the stability of the line. Now, every offensive line is going to go through injuries throughout a season, so you can't use that as an excuse. But I think that they may need a change there. They may be looking for a new offensive line coach this off season, but as far as the talent from 1 through 5, boy, I'd be hard pressed to find another 2 or 3 lines in this league that are better than that one.
We're talking with Matt Barrows of the Sacramento Bee. Do you think it's unlikely that the next head coach will come from one of the current assistant coaches on the team?
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I know this is going to sound like a wishy-washy answer. I think it's 50-50 at this point that the next head coach is either Jim Tomsula or Vic Fangio or somebody from the outside. I mean, I think that they feel confident that they could elevate one of those two guys and have a George Seifert type of situation, but they're not ruling out an outside candidate, and that's what this process is about. If they are blown away by Adam Gase, the Denver offensive coordinator, then they're going to hire Adam Gase. That's probably the biggest name out there. This is not an off season where there's a gotta have it type of guy. The only guy that fits that description just accepted the job at the University of Michigan. So there's nobody that at least the perception right now that is going to blow everybody away, and there's going to be a real race for that one guy. So, I think that's one of the reasons why they're taking their time on this. And the other is that they know in their back pocket they've got a Tom Sula or Fangio that they feel comfortable with elevating to that top position.
Matt Barrows joining us talking about the 49ers. Jim Harbaugh is in Michigan. They search for a new head coach. We've talked about a couple of the issues. Difficult to know right now who's going to be back and who's not in terms of personnel. But when you look at this team, what would you think would be maybe their top 2 areas of concern that they need to address in this offseason personnel-wise?
Well, I'm looking at one right now on the TV screen, and that's Devontae Parker, the wide receiver from Louisville. I really think that that's been a missing element on this team for a long time. A big, fast, downfield receiver that puts pressure on defenses. They just haven't had that guy. They tried with Randy Moss. They tried a little bit with Brandon Lloyd this year, but they haven't developed a young guy to fit that role since Terrell Owens. I mean,
it's been a long time. You're right.
That they brought in who has been consistently good here. I mean, Josh Morgan was okay, but only in spurts. I really think that has to be the number one concern. And then another position is outside linebacker or pass rusher. Alden Smith is one slip up away from being out of this league for a full year. And then what do you have? I don't think Ahmad Brooks is coming back. And then you've got Aaron Lynch, the rookie, who had a very nice year, but you don't want to rest your pass rush on a guy that had 6 sacks last year. So that, at least developing some depth behind Lynch and Alden Smith, I think has to be another must-do for the 49ers. And then tight end, I think. You didn't ask for a third, but Vernon Davis did not live up to his contract this year. He had the lowest number of receiving yards he's had in his career. He had 2 touchdowns in Week 1, and that's what he finished with for the season, 2 touchdowns. This is a guy who had 13 last season, and I was just talking about a downfield threat. That's what Vernon Davis used to do in this offense. He didn't do much of it this past season, and the 49ers really need to look hard at whether he's going to be kept around in coming years.
We're talking with Matt Barrows of the Sacramento Bee. Being an owner of a sports team isn't always the easiest thing in the world, and many of them probably don't get too caught up in what fans feel. But after the Thanksgiving game, Jed York, with his tweet, took a lot of criticism, and I personally feel that was justified. Regardless of how people feel about Jim Harbaugh, the reality is he turned this franchise into a winning franchise. I also think Trent Baalke had something to do with that with his outstanding draft picks. But it appears that the fan base of the 49ers are not really keen on Jed York right now. I'm just wondering if the 49ers team is not better, let's just say they get worse and they start a downward spiral. I mean, life's going to be pretty bad for him for a while, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that's certainly not out of the realm. I mean, we're talking about this being a veteran team. It's a veteran team, and maybe sort of getting to the, I don't want to say over the hill, because they got a lot of young guys as well, but a lot of the stalwarts on this team that really buoyed the team through its playoff runs the last 3 years. There are big question marks about whether they're going to come back next year. I mean, we're talking about Justin Smith, Frank Gore. Patrick Willis is coming back, but boy, he's been injured a lot in recent seasons. We just talked about Vernon Davis possibly not being back. So this could be a real sea change for this team, and it'll put a lot of the drafts that Trent Baalke has just had, where his draft picks really haven't been tested yet, it'll put them under the spotlight. And you're absolutely right. I mean, this could get ugly, and it could get ugly not only for Jed York, but for Trent Baalke as well. He's the next guy. I mean, the 49ers faltered a little bit this year, and they got rid of the head coach. They falter again, and all eyes are going to be on Baalke from this point forth.
Interesting with the Super Bowl going there next year, people were kind of forecasting the ascension of this franchise and thinking, gosh, this might be the year where you have the home team be playing in their own stadium. But that looks far-fetched right now. And now all of a sudden and listen, I don't disagree with you. I could definitely see the 49ers being better next year. I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's amazing how things can change in a span of one season in sports, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and it seems like the NFL is really the one league that typifies that more than any other. I mean, worst to first and first to worst. I mean, the 49ers were one loss away at the end there of finishing last in their own division.
Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a tough division, and it's not going to get any easier. I mean, Seattle.
Not in that division.
The Rams are going to be better.
Yep.
The Seahawks are consistently good, and the Cardinals are ascendant as well. So it's a tough division to even go 500 in. There are a lot of challenges, and that's what makes following this stuff pretty darn interesting.
Was the worst loss the Raiders lost this year, in your opinion, just because of everything that goes along with that? I know it's more of the fans than organizationally speaking, but was that the worst loss in your opinion?
In my opinion, the worst loss was the loss before that Seahawks loss on Thanksgiving. Primetime game against your arch rivals. Remember, at that point, a win over Seattle would have really put the 49ers in a good position, not only for the playoffs, but maybe to win that division, and they just came out with nothing. I had never seen that under Jim Harbaugh. And that carried over the next week against the Raiders, obviously. And really, those were the only 2 games this year that they just seemed listless and without punch and really tired, fatigued. The week after that, when they went back to Seattle, they had their groove back. They lost that game as well. And actually, after that game is when Harbaugh and York sat down and decided to part ways mutually, if you believe the press release the other day. But They got it back at the end of the season, but there were just 2 games in there right at the wrong time. Beginning of December when you need to have those wins to go to the playoffs, and they just didn't have it.
Matt, great stuff. Happy New Year. Always enjoy you coming on the show, and thank you very much for making the time. It's greatly appreciated.
You're welcome, Grant. Talk to you soon.
Yep, take care. Matt Barrows of the Bee joining us right here on KHTK. All right, so we've got phone calls for the rest of the show. That means you can get in and discuss anything that you want on today's topics at 339-1140. That's 339-1140. 800-920-1140. Jim, you're next here on the Grant Napear Show. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, hi, Grant. Happy New Year, first of all.
Same to you, Jim.
Well, I'm a huge Harbaugh fan, and I'm certainly glad as a 49er fan that he coached our team. But if he was going to lose his job, Grant, not getting rid of Greg Roman, not making changes offensively, they never got the play situation right where they had to call time. They never got that right in 3 years. They couldn't score inside the 10-yard line in the Super Bowl, in the championship game against your Giants. They had first down and goal at the 8-yard line. They went 1 for 13 on third down in that game. And I know they didn't have quite the offensive personnel they had the next year or the year after that. But I'm sorry, Grant. You can't take a team that should win a Super Bowl and get that close and not win because you can't get in from the 7-yard line. And I think if Jed and the other people had – now, there's a rumor down here, Grant, I don't know if you've heard this, that they did talk to Harbaugh about making changes like moving Greg Roman out, and he wouldn't do it. Have you heard any of that?
No.
Well,
I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot of things, but not to that degree.
Well, the thing about Jim Harbaugh is, if they did ask him that, he wouldn't get rid of Greg Roman because he's too loyal.
No, there's no way.
He didn't do that. His brother got rid of his offensive coordinator and went to win a Super Bowl. But, I think that's the biggest question we have here. I'm sorry to see Jim leave, but what I don't want to have happen with the 49ers is when I hear somebody like Jim Moore Jr. being considered, that scares me because I don't think very highly of him as a coach. And I'm not sure Tom Sula's the guy, and I'm not sure Fangio's the guy. What I would like, and I think a lot of 49er fans would like, is I want an offensive guy. Now, if he's not the head coach, he's got to have full impact on the offense, whoever that is. Because I think you have to develop Kaepernick, and you have to get a speed guy, which they've never gotten, really, a top-type receiver. There was talk that they were going to move up and get Odell Beckham last year. Well, you know what, Grant? They could have done that because they had a slew of draft picks. There's a possibility they could have moved up, and they didn't do it. And that's what worries me. I think the offensive line will be fine. I think it's health more than anything else. And, if they let Vernon Davis go, if they let a lot of these people, Brooks go, they had this thing on CBS Sports, Grant. They're going to have $55 million at cap room if they let the people go that really should be let go, that aren't producing anymore. And
Jim, always good hearing from you as always, Jim. Good hearing. I got to go, Jim. Thank you as always. Good hearing from you. Happy New Year. Todd, you're on with Grant Napear. Hi, Todd.
Grant, thanks for taking the call. I liked the interview with Matt. That was great.
Thank you.
Real quick, though, going back, we're talking a lot about coaching.
I don't know who that is. All right. 339-1140, 800-920-1140. We are going to be with you right up until 7 o'clock, and we will take phone calls in the next segment. We will have our last 30 minutes of 2014 as the Kings play tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and then it's New Year's Day in Minnesota, and then the Kings move on for Game 4 of this road trip. All right, we'll come right back. This is the Grant Napear Show on KHTK.